Hi folks, the year is 2010. I had just gotten started in this manufacturing pursuit and I loved it, and I almost lost it all. I made a really bad mistake around how to price a product. So I want to share more about that story and the 5 most important things to keep in mind when you're pricing a product. So I wanted desperately to have this turn out to be a success. I think that's a feeling that any entrepreneur knows. It is wonderful to develop a product, to bring it to market, and I love manufacturing. I love running the machines, making parts. And that's what led to this fatal flaw. I gave my 2 weeks notice to quit my job to pursue this full time. I'd grown up as a competitive shooter. I developed this auto reset rifle target. The reason I wanted to go full time was I thought we didn't have enough time to get it off the ground, and I thought giving myself more free time would somehow make a product that wasn't going to be financially feasible somehow work. Thank God my boss took mercy on me and said, no, don't quit. You need to figure this out. Keep working here and figure it out on the side. So that first lesson is how a product is priced should have nothing to do with how much it costs to make. I was thinking, well, it's going to cost us $700 to make it, so let's sell it for $900. I made that mistake of thinking just because it cost me this much means that's what it should retail for. What I should have done was looked at what other products are out there, both in the resettable target, kind of the high-end target range, but also just all general shooting targets, to think about what are people interested and willing to pay, and then looked at, okay, if people are willing to pay this much for this sort of a product, can I become a player in that space at this price point and at these margins? The good news is that this is an easier than ever issue to research and figure out. Go look at what else is for sale, whether you're bringing a flashlight to market or a car part or a firearms accessory. It is very easy this day and age to understand what is the marketplace and what are those price ranges, and that proves and shows what are people willing to pay for this. I didn't want to hear it at the time, but people weren't really willing to spend $1,000 for a rifle target. The second bullet point relates back to the first one, because ultimately the first tip tells you how much it can sell for, but you got to figure out what it costs to make and decide if that's enough. I don't think anybody likes answers that say, well, it depends. So instead of saying it depends, I'm just going to say we have a 4x cost of goods sold starting point. Meaning, if I want to sell something for $200, I need to make sure I can purchase the material for $50 or less. And really where this varies is, what are you considering the $50? Is that just the cost of the aluminum, or are you adding in manufacturing costs, marketing costs, machining costs, etc.? Obviously, if it's a machine product, substantial difference between the raw material cost and the machining. Now, if you're able to do the machining in-house, you may think about that a lot differently. A great resource to pursue this further is leverage sites like Xometry. You can upload files directly to their website, but you can also use their Fusion 360 plugin to immediately get pricing. I found that if you are buying approximately $1,000 worth or more, the algorithm isn't too far off. And sometimes, the John Saunders 10 years ago, I needed to see and realize, hey, what I think could be machined for $12, it's not a $12 part. I now understand that better, but I didn't back then. The third piece of advice, look at the downside and upside scenario. What happens if you only sell 10 of these per year? Was it going to be worth all your effort and time to figure out how to market it and build a website and packaging and design and so forth? What happens if you sell 1,000 or 10,000 a year? Are you able to do that? Are you interested in doing that? Do you want to think about buying extra CNC machines and hiring people and facilities and so forth? Some people don't want to. There's a great example of where all of a sudden they had this huge surprise in demand for their product. Too much demand too quickly. So it can be a little bit hard to think about the extreme cases, but that's what I think about is, does this get me excited? And sometimes you need to hear that to decide if your own idea is one that you should just put that on the back burner and pick up one that maybe has a little bit better potential. Fourth bullet point, and man, I didn't want to hear this back in the day. Leave room for, I'll call it a distributor, but just leave room for someone else, because at some point it's possible, if not probable, that someone's going to come to you as a distributor or a reseller or wholesaler or retail store or somebody and offer the ability to take what could be a meaningful book of business and help sell your products, etc., and they're going to want their cut. Again, to avoid the it depends, plan on at a minimum 10% and upwards of 35 to 50% margin to that person. Again, when I first heard this, I thought, we don't need them. We'll stay direct, etc. And while that's viable, in talking to the other folks out there who have pursued manufacturing and entrepreneurial pursuits, more often than not, it makes more sense in the end to bring folks like that on board. But you can't do it if you don't have enough margin. One of the first times I had to deal with this was when a household name aerospace company wanted to buy our products through a distributor. I would challenge most entrepreneurs to be willing to walk away from that deal. It was a good end customer and it was a good size order, but you've got to be able to work with a distributor there to give them a cut. The fifth bullet point technically is not a pricing comment, but it has everything to do with pricing because it has to do with convincing that customer to click that purchase button. Now, price is a major factor, but so is the item being in stock. Everybody knows we live in this Amazon world. As a manufacturing company, being able to show folks that we have stuff in stock and being able to ship it quickly, it makes all the difference in the world, to the point where folks will often look for other options, whether they're less expensive or more expensive or inferior or superior, if they just can't click order and buy that product right then and there. 3 more bonus tips though that I want to leave you with. Number 1, like them or not, sales work, any form of discount or promotion, etc. Now, there's a lot to be said for not doing sales and maintaining that price point consistency, but it's worth being said that the folks that have studied consumer buying habits and behaviors, sales are very effective. Second tip, the $70 steak. There's a reason sometimes restaurants will put one entree on a menu that's really expensive because it makes you feel a lot less guilty about buying the second most expensive item. That's a really powerful thing to think about when folks are comparing products on a website when they're buying something. And the last piece of advice, do not listen to family and friends. Too often, the advice is either inexperienced or biased with love or just the desire to play devil's advocate. What you should do is listen to your customer. And the best example of that is from a mentor of mine who brought a product to market back in the 90s. And he would go to the local mall and watch as people bought not his product, but his competitor's product. And when they bought the competitor's product, he would ask them if they'd be willing to share what led them to that decision. And the feedback he got was absolutely spot on, that allowed them to iterate. In this case, it was mostly their packaging and make a huge impact on the future sales of that product. As always, folks, though, hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed. Take care. See you soon.